Hello and welcome to this lesson on writing clear paragraphs. How to write clear paragraphs. My name is Dr. Lola Ayongbayi, and as always, I'm here to help you learn how to write better. The goal of this lesson is to help you learn how to structure your writing for smooth flow using paragraphs. Now, this is important for any type of professional writing. If you need to, pause the slides to let each concept sink in before moving on. So, what is a paragraph? A paragraph is a group of sentences that discuss an idea or something that is related. Typically, a paragraph has three parts: an opening sentence, or what some people call a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and a concluding sentence. Typically, a paragraph would have about 6 sentences, between 5 and 6 sentences, and the supporting sentences could be 3 or 4. But that is not a hard and fast rule. In some types of writing, like academic writing, paragraphs usually run for longer and it is acceptable. Okay, so let's look at the opening sentence. The opening sentence is also called the topic sentence, like I've already said. It should stir the paragraph. So it opens the paragraph, it should stir the paragraph. It carries the key idea, all right, and it lets the reader know that this is what this paragraph is all about. It sets an expectation of what to follow in the reader's mind. Going on to supporting sentences. These expand on the opening sentence and communicates other ideas related to the controlling idea that has been shared by the opening sentence. A reliable way of developing supporting sentences is to turn the opening sentence into a question. Now, answering that question will provide you with details you can convert to supporting sentences. So if you've ever found yourself stuck, or if you're one of those people that struggle with generating content for your writing, when you want to break up your paragraphs or when you're creating paragraphs, the first thing you should think about is having an opening sentence and then flipping that over to become a question, and then answer that question, and you would have your supporting sentences. We'll see an example further down, okay? Now, let's talk about the concluding sentence. The concluding sentence signals that you have nothing left to say about the ideas in that paragraph. So you've exhausted all your points and you're happy to move on to the next idea or the next concept or whatever it is that you want to say after, whatever is new that you want to say, next. The best way to end a paragraph, so the best way to write your concluding sentence, is to either rephrase the opening sentence, so you're reiterating the whole point, the essence of that paragraph, or you summarize the ideas you've just discussed. We will take an example next. So here is an example. My opening sentence is, drinking 8 glasses of water daily is necessary for good health. Now, I want to create my supporting sentences, and I really don't have my points all laid out in my mind. So what do? I flip that around and ask a question. Why is drinking 8 glasses of water daily necessary for good health? So I have these answers: to prevent dehydration, which impairs cognitive function, to help your muscles stay strong, to help clear out waste from your kidneys, to reduce inflammation caused by toxins in the body, which can cause blotchy skin. Now, note that these answers will form the basis of my supporting sentences, and I would need to connect them to each other smoothly, okay? And logically, I just can't dump these answers in my paragraph the way they are. You will see how I'll do that on the next slide. So my concluding sentence is staying hydrated is vital because our bodies need water and fluids to function properly. So let's see how I merge all of this to create a sensible paragraph. Here we go. Drinking 8 glasses of water daily is necessary for good health. It maintains cognitive function and helps the muscles stay strong. It also clears out waste from the kidneys. The skin isn't left out because drinking adequate amounts of water reduces the blotchiness caused by toxin-induced inflammation. Considering these, it is safe to say that staying hydrated is vital for our bodies to function properly. So can you see what I've done here? And if you take into consideration all the things you've learned about varying your sentence structure and sentence length, you will see that I have quite a nice mix of sentences here. Different lengths, different structures, and all of that. So let's move on. Now, important points to note when creating a paragraph. It is very safe to aim for a clear central idea per paragraph, okay? Now, in academic writing, sometimes this doesn't happen again. Academic writing is quite peculiar sometimes because you're doing some critical analysis or comparing and contrasting ideas. A paragraph can run for quite long and can have more than one central idea, but you can, rest assured that they will always be connected. All right, so make sure that you present a clear central idea per paragraph. Okay. Next, aim for coherence. So coherence simply means smoothness, flow within each paragraph. You don't want abrupt sentences. You want everything to just feed into each other and create a pleasurable reading experience. How do you do this? Link your sentences using appropriate conjunctions and bearing in mind the different types of sentences and punctuation rules, okay? Present information logically. It is important that when you're organizing your sentences within paragraphs, as well as when you're organizing paragraphs within the wider text, it is important to provide logical order. Sometimes this might be easy to achieve, sometimes it might be obvious. Other times, the so-called logical order can be subjective, and that's where your discretion comes in, okay? But writing takes effort, and it's not just something that you do and just that you do carelessly. You pay attention and consider the pros and the cons of your decisions when creating structure within your writing. Now, so it is important to present information logically. Next, be consistent in your use of singular and plural forms of nouns and pronouns. So you don't want to say she somewhere, or you don't want to say Mary and then go on and say he when referring to Mary. You don't want to say she somewhere and then go on and use it somewhere else. You don't want to say they somewhere and then go on and use go on and use I. You want to be sure that your pronouns and nouns are consistent in their singular use. So when you introduce something as plural, be consistent with that plural form throughout that paragraph, okay? And it is important that you pay attention to collective nouns, or some people call them group nouns. So with collective nouns, I'm sure you know what collective nouns are. Nouns that represent a group of people or a group of things. So we've got examples here. The team is meeting, the team are meeting. My family is here, my family are here. The band is singing, the band are singing. All of these are correct, okay? So it all depends on your intent. What are you trying to pass across? What is your strongest, message that you're trying to pass across to your reader? Okay, so it is important that whatever you choose, so if you choose to use singular to represent your collective noun, be consistent in that use throughout your paragraph. That way you communicate to your reader that you know what you're doing and that your choice is intentional. Okay, you don't come across as confused, especially if you have readers that think otherwise. But when they see that you've been consistent, they will get the gist that this is what you choose to use, regardless of what other people think. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, I'd like to say at this point that all types of writing can benefit from using paragraphs. However, they have to be structured in different ways depending on the type of writing to make your readers connect with your message or with the ideas. So to aid readability generally, you need to organize your paragraphs appropriately for the writing style for the predominant writing style that you're using, because sometimes your writing could have more than one writing style in it. All right, so how do you arrange paragraphs? I've got a table here which I hope will communicate this as concisely as possible. For narrative writing, arrange paragraphs according to the time in which things occurred. Okay, and that's why I have time order. In descriptive writing, space order, which is something that refers to the order in which ideas, objects, or other elements of your writing are physically located. Space order is useful for arranging paragraphs. By space order, I mean this physical location of your elements or ideas. Okay, so in expository writing, you arrange your paragraphs according to the concepts or their definitions. So now it is important that because expository writing focuses on explaining something, so you're best defining and explaining a concept or introducing a new concept in one paragraph. Don't mix them up. Okay, reserve your paragraphs for each or for a different concept or explanation. If one paragraph is running too long, don't worry about it, as long as you've used enough white space and you've kept that paragraph focused on that concept. Now let me say something about descriptive, just in case you're worrying about, or you're wondering rather, what I meant by physical location of elements or ideas. So let's take, for example, so I'm talking about descriptive now. Let's take, for example, that you were describing the human body. You would describe the head before you describe the eyes, before you describe the nose, before you describe the mouth. Okay? You would not describe the legs before you describe the hands. You would go in order of how these different parts of the body are located. I hope that makes some sense. So let's move on to persuasive writing. With persuasive writing, you can arrange paragraphs based on opinion. Okay? That means that present each opinion and its rationale in a paragraph. If you're comparing and contrasting ideas, you can also compare and contrast similar themes within one paragraph. I skipped the process aspect of expository writing, so I'm just going to fill that in. So in expository writing, you can also arrange your paragraphs according to how something happens. That's why I've got it there in that bullet point. That's why I've got it there as process. Okay, you can arrange your paragraphs according to how things happen. So for example, you can use steps, you can use lists, you can even use time order. Yes, so there is a bit of a crossover between narrative and expository, which is perfectly fine. All right, so that is how those are suggested ways that you can organize your writing based on the predominant style. So let's move on. So moving on to transitioning between paragraphs. You might be wondering, what is transitioning? Well, in writing, transitioning involves logically connecting our ideas to each other. If you remember that each paragraph should have a central idea. Then transitioning is all about linking all these central ideas to form, one smooth piece of writing. So you want your readers to be able to move from one paragraph to the next without thinking that they've been dumped from one idea, into another. You want to create that cohesion, that coherence, that thing that just makes them flow, and then they get to the end of the writing and they're like, wow, this was a lovely piece of writing. So that's what transitioning is all about. Now, before I move on, let me say that for transitions to be effective, you must have arranged your paragraphs in a logical order. So all the ideas, you must have arranged them in a logical order. Okay, transitioning is just connecting them smoothly, but you must have previously arranged them in a logical order, which could be how they relate to each other. Okay, we just talked about the different ways you can arrange your writing. The different ways you can arrange your paragraphs. We just talked about that in the previous slide. So when you've arranged your paragraphs, in a logical sequence, the next task is to think about connecting them smoothly. And that is what transitioning is all about. Transitioning can be achieved using words, phrases, or sentences. And I've got some examples here. Examples of words that you could use are nevertheless, however, phrases in the same vein, considering these sentences. So I've created the sentence based on the previous example that I shared about drinking adequate amount of water. Now, let's assume that I wanted to create another paragraph after that paragraph I already crafted. I could easily say, following on from the points already highlighted, drinking the recommended amount of water isn't enough. So I'm telling the reader that, hey, we're moving on. Yes, I've made this point, but there's more. That is what the sentence is telling them. So it is transitioning them smoothly, okay, into the next paragraph. So, and then my support, so that would also function as my opening statement. And then I go on to the next supporting statement, which, or I go on to my first supporting statement, which is apparently the type of water you drink also plays a role in keeping you healthy. And then I could keep developing this until I have a few more sentences, and then I wrap it up with a concluding sentence. Okay, so that's how to, how you can use a sentence to transition between paragraphs. Now, when linking a paragraph to the next, don't just do so for the sake of it. It is important that you understand that the transition words or phrases you use guide the way your readers will perceive or react to the preceding information and the subsequent information. So you're shaping their thinking with your transitioning words or transitioning phrases or sentences. So, for example, when you use nevertheless, you're making a case or lending support to a contrasting piece of information you are about providing. Okay, so please bear in mind that transitioning between paragraphs highlights the relationships between paragraphs, and it is important that you choose the right words and the right phrases or the right sentences. Make sure that it does the job of what you're trying to communicate. So let's move on to the next slide, where I'll show you some popular transitional words and phrases, and the relationships they suggest when used in your writing. Now, if you're trying to depict a relation, or rather, if you're trying to show examples, you can use, for instance, for example, specifically, namely. Please bear in mind that this table isn't exhaustive. I'm sure you can come up with lots more. I just created this to help you understand to help you understand that transitional words and phrases, or transitional expressions, like some people would say, are elements of writing that you use very intentionally. They can change the course, they can change the course of your writing. Okay, so let's assume that you wanted to depict similarity. You would use likewise, also, similarly, in the same vein. If the relationship you're trying to depict is, you're trying to show contrast, or you're trying to give an exception to something you've already written, you can use nevertheless, however, nonetheless, despite, on the contrary. In the same vein, you could, for cause and effect, you have therefore, as a result, hence, accordingly, in light of, considering. If you're trying to demonstrate or show a time relationship, subsequently, immediately, afterward, recently, and so on. If you're trying to, show order or sequence, you can use first, second, lastly, finally, next. For additional information, so you're trying to provide additional information, you can use besides, additionally, in addition, furthermore, again. If you really want to stress a point, or you want to show that show that something is vital, something is important, you can use indeed, you can use in fact, you can use of course, even, and the list is endless. To conclude or summarize, you can say to conclude, lastly, on the whole, in summary, finally. Honestly, I'm sure if you do some research, you'll find more of these words, and I'm sure you know a lot of them already. So what I'm trying to get you to start doing is to start paying attention to how you use these transitional expressions, because I've read a lot of writings, and they have used the wrong transitional words or the wrong transitional elements, and they have passed across the wrong messages. In some cases, it just shows that you can't be taken seriously, and this is one thing that we want to avoid in our places of work, in our businesses, generally in your professional life, and in and career. You want to demonstrate that you know what you're writing about. That is very important. It is always very important. I'm sure you would agree. So that brings us to the end of this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Before I let you go, I'd like us to take some affirmations, shall we? I am an amazing learner. I remember to apply all that I am learning when I write. I express my thoughts articulately in writing. I am an excellent writer and communicator. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.